Okay, we should be live. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order this at 8:03 p.m. this February 28th, 2022. I'd like to acknowledge that the offices of the Wilfrid Laurier University Students' Union are on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, I have received none, but currently we are missing attendance Director May, Director McCarthy, and Director Symington. So we hope that they're able to join this meeting soon.
Mackenzie's here.
Oh, sorry. My apologies, Mackenzie. Perfect timing. And Shane, perfect timing. Okay. With that said, we can move on to the adoption agenda. So can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented with the amendment to pull to table the monitoring report for GP2J for a next meeting? Motion by Director Shando, seconded by Director Vale. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Point of order, what you're saying, Jay, should it be 2I?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Yes, 2I. My apologies. Yes, 2I. Yes. We have any opposition? Any abstentions? As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent without Director McCarthy. Next, moving on to conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare today? As I see none, then we can move on to the adoption of the consent agenda. So this will include monitoring report GP2J and the monitoring report for EL2EU that was updated as specified in the previous meeting. So can I get a motion that the board of directors adopt the consent agenda as presented? Motion by Director Vale.
Oh, so I'm actually that's not my motion I want to make. So I want to pull GP2J6 and EL2E7. So effectively, the updated report from the president, essentially that's pulled, but just a section that wasn't approved, and then for discussion, and then same with GP2J6. But otherwise, I will motion to approve everything else.
Sorry, could you repeat what your reasoning is?
Well, that comes after. I'm just requesting to pull them from that, and then we'll get into discussion of them right after we deal with the remaining items in the rest of the pieces in the consent agenda. So I'm just pulling GP2J6 and EL2E7, and that was it.
2E7. Okay. Okay, then we can get the motion. So motion to do that. So we have a mover. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Director Boffo. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. Do we have any opposition? Do we have any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. So I guess we can enter into discussion. So would we like to, yes, Director Vale?
So on page 30 of the agenda package, just for ease of reference for folks, sorry, 30. Did I write it down wrong? I think I wrote it down wrong. No, I got it right. 30, EL2E7. I have to say I'm a bit disappointed. So the board requested so we deferred the approval of that portion, that monitoring part of the monitoring report in the last meeting, because again, it was non-compliant. We didn't have so then the board directed the president to provide the information, which was then obviously needed for my finance committee. And the updated report was the very report that the board received in December, which was the one that should have been provided to us back in, I believe it was August or September. So in other words, the compliance still hasn't been achieved despite compliance being reported as being compliance, and the report that is provided is not for the correct period. So the period that was provided was for the fiscal quarter ending in July 31. That should have been, what is it, October 31st, 2021, which is the one that should have been provided to the board in December. So I'm going to make a motion that we defer the approval of this monitoring report to the next meeting, and that the president be directed to provide us with an updated report by next meeting.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. So motion by Director Vale. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see not, oh, sorry. Yes, Executive Director Champagne.
I just have a quick question. Whoop, and I'm dictating into my phone by accident. Sorry about that. You're looking for quarterly report for which quarter specifically for this?
So the report that the president is indicating she provided the board in December was actually the one that should have been provided to us in July or August, which was the quarter ended July 31, 2021, which would have been the first quarter of the fiscal year. That was so that should have come to us in, I believe it was August, September, but just because of delays at that time was cited to COVID, we didn't get, so the board requested it and eventually we got it, that came in December. But that, so the quarter that we should be receiving for the second quarter,
Just
October 31.
October 31?
Yeah, that should be the end of quarter 2.
Okay, thank you.
Because that was the December, which is what the December period is for.
Thank you. I can make a note of that too. It's also October 31st.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can communicate that to the president and get that to provide to the board for next meeting. Very latest. Okay. If there are no other questions, would you like to move on? Do you want to discuss the GP 2J62 as well? Director
Yeah,
Vale?
so page 20, so a couple things. I'm concerned that in my opinion, I don't feel we were compliant with this. So first, I can't seem to find the statements online other than the draft ones in the agenda package. But my bigger concern, so we had, as you recall, the statements and it wasn't our fault. I believe as I recall, it was the fault of the firm that we're dealing with. Was sort of the delay was on them at that point because of the extension the extension that you're saying was granted wasn't to the 4th, it was to December 1st, but the first board meeting in December, as I recall, was that motion. But the in any event, because of the firm, they didn't come until January 4th, but that's an unrelated matter. But in essence, the draft statements were only provided the board on that meeting on the 4th, but the board is still not in receipt of the final audit report. So as you'll recall, the draft audit, which is approved by the board, isn't the final statements, as there's subsequent events work that has to be done, and as it was indicated in the report, and that they would be communicating with all members of the board, not just the chair, to provide us with the finalized audit report. So I'm still not in receipt of such a report and statement, so I don't know where that's at, but I'm just concerned that technically speaking, we weren't compliant with this.
I see. Okay, well, that is not a problem. I can, I'm sure that the final report has been communicated, although I don't think any changes were made between that and the draft, but I can make sure that.
So I don't know if this is an operational or if it was like in the governance side or if this is KPMG, but somewhere, I think there's a communication gap maybe somewhere, that's all.
Well, since this is the monitoring report of the CGO, I will take responsibility on this one and look into it and make sure that they are up online for the ownership to review
and just circulated to the board. Great, thank you. And but I would be apt to approve this if it was changed to non-compliant.
Okay, perfect. Well, I will make note of that and then get that as soon as this meeting is completed. Were there any other discussion you want to have regarding the monitoring reports? Since it's on the floor to deal with it, do you want to just defer this to next meeting or that section, or what do you think? I mean, we can, I guess you can vote for this section to be compliant pending that immediately after this meeting that the final copies of the auditor statements.
Well, it still wouldn't change the fact that we were non-compliant. That's the issue. Because again, that was dependent on the dates, not the, so it's not as if we can go back after and become compliant, if you will.
Non-compliant.
But then we can, I think, and then just say what actions we're taking, kind of thing. That it's now as of X date, it was like, so we're showing that we're compliant, if that makes sense.
I can update.
I'll make a motion to defer this to the next meeting, I guess, for the updated report and to give the chair time.
Okay, that sounds good. So we have a mover to defer.
And so to be specific, to defer the monitoring report for GP 2J6 to the next meeting.
Okay, motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Shandok. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, then any opposition? Any abstentions? If not, then the motion passes unanimously. So thank you for those comments, and we'll make sure to get the reports as soon as possible to the board. With that concludes the morning report discussion. We can move on to comments from the chair of the board and CGO. So I do have a couple of comments to make. I first want to welcome everyone back from reading week. So I hope that everyone had a restful reading week, either productive or taking some time to enjoy themselves, despite the recent geopolitical news that's been occurring. But before I move on to my other comments, I just want to make a note of a verbal statement regarding the issue of quorum that happened at the last meeting. So the steps that were taken in my role as the chief governance officer was that I had private discussions with the individuals who were unable to come, who did not provide regrets in a reasonable time frame, and just work to strive to make sure that they were what steps were required to help work together so we can ensure that quorum is not an issue at future board meetings. And I just want to remind to the board as a whole that we have signed on this role as directors to make sure that we are doing a good role to represent the ownership, and that we should abide by our policy of GP2A, which should ensure that that we have effective governance, and that really entails regular attendance and preparation for these board meetings. So just want to update everyone on those steps that were taken based on discussion that happened last meeting. But moving on to some more happier news. So I'm happy to say that we have a live streaming finally on live at this meeting. So it's been quite a lot of hoops and hurdles. I believe we had this discussion all the way back in August, and we had to defer based on many of the different things that happened this year. But we are now live on, even back in May. So we are now currently live on YouTube. So just to give a kind of a quick summary of what the discussions were. So we were trying to do some testing based on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, but based on our conversation with marketing, it is determined that YouTube was the most stable platform, because the other platforms like Facebook and Instagram, the videos would have been vertical, so it would have been hard to have the gallery view here that we are seeing for everyone, or to share screens, and as well, it's more designed for either short form video formats or live streaming of a single person in a vertical point. But that being said, we are working to have so just like for today's meeting, we have actually a countdown feature that will tell everyone hey, when the next board meeting is, and to link them to this YouTube or to the Students Union page. And we're just still working on additional social media outreach, because we still want to use those two platforms. We just think that YouTube will now be kind of the home for all videos, and as more of a permanent place, and then it's easily accessible. In addition, I'm also excited to say that with the current direction that the government is heading towards, in terms of in-person capacities, it does look very likely that we will be able to hold a in-person meeting with the board for our March 14th meeting. So I'm very, very excited to say that. So I just want to give the heads up. And in regards to that, I'll be working with operations and other directors to see what works best to ensure everyone's safety, as well as to also implement the live streaming capabilities, or if someone needs to call in due to some sort of regrets or reasons that they're unable to attend in person, we can set up that hybrid point two as well. And that will also be useful moving forward for when we have our board next year calling in from Brantford if they need so. So that is my updates. Does anyone have any questions for myself as chair and CGO? Yes, Director Bothwell.
I just wanted to bring up the comments I was just put in the gallery, because I do think it's an interesting idea an interesting avenue to explore. Nicholas just said was wondering about the possibility of live streaming through the campus TV.
That would be an interesting question. That would be more of an operations answer, I would assume.
Yeah, just because we're on the topic of live streaming.
So I might defer this question to Phil, if you could add some insight.
We've never used those computers in that way before because there's no way to actually engage sound. So,
Fair.
I mean, theoretically, it's doable, although I'm not honestly up to speed on the capabilities of the units that like the actual computers that run those screens because they're pretty basic. But sound would be the utmost problem.
Yeah,
Actually,
that seems like you can't avoid that if there's no sound.
I do have a thought on that because I do like the idea of actually using the TVs, especially the ones beside Wells. Since we have this countdown feature that marketing has worked on, I think that might not be a bad idea to have a countdown or some sort of like advertising about like, hey, when the next board meeting is, that we can pop on there, and maybe a QR code too.
So QR codes on screens are a bit weird, but not undoable. But advertising and putting up that countdown clock should be theoretically doable.
Just something, because I do like the idea that was presented in the gallery by Nicholas. I think that is that is an asset that we should be using. So we can have discussions on that. But next on the speakers list, Shane, or sorry, my apologies, Director Symington.
You can call me whatever you want, Andrew. It's all good. I would, well, so with respect to the audio thing, I'm just thinking like if like you were to walk through campus and let's say you were like beside Wilf's and like the live stream was like on that TV, I'm not sure, like you'd have to be playing it loud enough for like someone to like actually like pick up on it and hear it. And there's not really like seating for anyone to like go and like, actually like pull like or like consume the meeting in its entirety. But the other thing is if we don't have audio, we could fall back on like auto-generated captions, depending on the depending on, well, I know like some are more reliable than others and like how that would work. I'm not too sure, but if I think that kind of solves like both problems because you don't want to be like invasive in terms of like what you're putting on like the screens if like people don't want to hear it essentially because a lot of people do have to pass through those areas. But I think putting on captions essentially kind of solves both problems. But I also do like the idea of the radio channel because I think that also kind of feeds into people like actually hearing, the meetings.
I have, for the record, I have made note of the radio channel, the audio generated captions, because we do have the transfer feature actually available for the live stream for those who are hearing impaired or require that for ease of accessibility. So what I can say is that I can have a conversation with marketing because I actually will be having another one with them to just kind of review like looking at like how is this live streaming working out today, and just fine tuning our strategy. What I can also say is that we can potentially get the social media ad hoc committee again to maybe take another deep dive in this, because I think that this type of work may require a little bit more boots in the ground, as the saying goes. I hope that is sufficient for everyone, and that if you have any concerns or any recommendations you'd like for the live stream moving forward, like please let me know, because this is a work in progress, and we're more than happy to establish something that will be a more permanent government, I guess, practice moving forward into the next board too as well. But with that being said, does anyone else have any questions for me as Chair and CGO? I do have updates on the board training too as well, but I will leave that with the executive director because I believe he has much more information, although I can provide information on the dates when that time comes. But if not else, then I can go on to the comments of the president and CEO. So pass off to President Yama.
Thank you. So a bit going on today or this week, just coming back off of the reading week myself, getting caught up, but specifically starting tomorrow, March has been dedicated as a mental health type month where we're going to have a ton of different programming, events, and resources highlighted throughout the entire month. We'll be having a weekly newsletter focused solely on the mental health initiatives coming forward. This will be broadcasted on our social medias and our website. We've also worked alongside athletics and a few other stakeholders on campus so there will be a bunch of different campus groups and organizations involved. So that's very exciting. There will be more information about it on the social media starting tomorrow. Beyond that, we've been having mental health in-class presentations. My team has been really great with those. Those are scheduled to be done before the final schedules come out for finals. And then otherwise, on the University Affairs side, USA General Assembly is next week. So preparing heavily for that, having our delegates prepared to meet soon, just to give them an understanding of what's to be expected. And then local advocacy week following that week. So organizing that as well. Other than that, that's pretty much most of what's going on this month, which is fairly busy. But I will ensure that you all have access to all the information coming out about Mental Health Month. And if anyone has any interest in GA, please let me know. We are looking for delegates still.
Okay, thank you so much for those comments. Does anyone have any questions for President Yamla? Okay, yes, Director Bothwell.
What does GA stand for?
General Assembly for USA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, Director Avail.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to the president. I'm just wondering, kind of with the announcement or the tomorrow, I guess it'll be the changes in the government provincial restrictions and sort of the recent changes in the framework at Laurie and sort of where we're at, and that if sort of the students' union is going to be kind of looking to provide more in-person, events and opportunities for students over the next sort of month and a bit, I guess, left of the winter term.
I haven't had too much communication in relations to that. I'm sure that there will be some, but I'm sure that Phil, if you have any additional information you want to share here, I think that we're just going to see as things progress.
I know that, pardon me, where the hospitality department is concerned, it's going to be business as usual for the foreseeable future. We are in the process of working out to see what in-person events could like. So extending Wilf's hours into the evening where there's a possibility of doing events. In terms of probably what's more of interest to the student population is the clubs activities and faculty association activities. I know that Jason was working very closely with the pandemic recovery and executive leadership of the university over the course of last week in my absence. So I haven't had time to touch base with him yet to figure out all of the ins and outs. But the clubs department is very much up to speed on what's allowed and when. And they will be communicating that out likely via the Nest, which is their primary platform and management system, and likely have presidents be blasted out via email, updating them on what's the possibility. So we kind of anticipated this was coming and have been working with them, just trying to clarify what exactly the university is going to do differently than what the ministry is doing, just because just the ministry says that something's doable doesn't necessarily mean the university will let us do stuff. So we are trying to get clarification on that. And then obviously the difficulty with Wilf's changing the model still relies heavily on staff that we don't currently have. So we are looking at potentially extending the hours, but shortening the lunch hours, if that makes any kind of sense. So if we're doing an hourly day-by-day study of how busy we are during those particular time periods, because it appears as though takeout later in the evening seems to ramp up pretty nicely. And so it might make better business sense and better student sense to shorten the lunch period and lengthen the dinner period, but have not confirmed any of that as of today.
Hope
Which
that
was
answers.
a very long way of saying stay tuned.
Okay, perfect. Does that answer your question, Director Vail?
Yeah, no, it does. No, I've just been getting a lot of inquiries, from students on the institutional side about, wanting the sort of non-academic pieces. So I just thought I'd ask about the student union side kind of, but thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions on speakers list for President Yalma? As I see none, then we can thank her for comments and her time and then move forward to the comments from the executive director and CEO. So I can pass it off to Phil.
So I don't have a ton more to update than what I've already just kind of droned on about. As I said, I was away last week, so I'm not entirely up to speed on everything. I had a variety of meetings today trying to get up to speed on where we're at with things. One of the major pieces that kind of came out today to the university community is that the Dean of Students on the Waterloo campus, Kate McCreary Bristol, will be the acting director of athletics for the foreseeable future while they do an extensive search for Peter Baxter's replacement. In the interim, Adam Lawrence will become a singular Dean of Students that splits his time between the Waterloo and Brantford campuses, and they realign the staffing in both of those offices to kind of cover off the multi-campus portfolio. I believe that the plan that they've put together is a pretty strong one, and Kate will bring excellent leadership to a department that needs it, as we all do. So we look forward to working with Kate in that kind of new capacity, and looking forward to working with Ivan and his team as they go forward, trying to do what I would imagine would be possibly even an international search for a new director of athletics, because there's lots of opportunities for growth for that department moving forward. The hard work that Peter Baxter and his teams have done over the years has gotten athletics to this point, which has been a very successful program. But there's lots of opportunity for growth for that department. So we look forward to seeing what that ultimately looks like in the grand scheme of things. Other than that, it's just mostly business as usual. I'm just trying to think if there's anything new and noteworthy. We have a meeting with non-tuition fee protocol tomorrow, which is to go over the non-tuition fee report for the university. Inflation this year, as you guys are probably well aware, is pretty significant, going anywhere between 4 to 4.8%, which is a pretty substantial number across the board. And it's at least double of what we've done for the last number of years. So the impact of that is not lost on us. So we will be having some pretty extensive conversations about the impact of all of those and all of the fees that have gone up. The Students' Union, if you'll recall, our 6 quote unquote programming and activity and service fees are going to be frozen. But the building fees that we have will be increasing by 4% inflation to kind of cover off the costs that are in there, as well as the health and dental costs. But the 4 to 6 fees, I can't remember off the top of my head, will be frozen for next year.
Sweet. Okay, well, if those are all the updates, then we can open up the floor for questions to Executive Director Champagne. I believe that there was questions about the briefing note on the 2nd and 3rd page regarding the training.
Yep.
So could you explain that a little bit more to the board?
Yeah, let me just go to
Yeah,
it.
so that would be
Which
like the
page in the
cost.
agenda package?
That would be 36 and 37.
That is 46, and that is not a thing in this. That is.
It's special
Ah!
salary adjustments, McGill, and
Yeah.
acting rate exempt.
Yeah. Was that not
Allowance?
supposed to be there, I'm assuming?
That is part of a PJ. Remember that draft I told you I couldn't find? Found it.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going
That's
through
part.
it.
That's part of something altogether different. My apologies to the board. That was definitely not supposed to be part of that, and certainly explains why there was no context and there was confusion.
Okay. Oh, okay. With that being said, then, okay, that makes sense. Because I was under the assumption too. I think some of the board members were that was like relating to the cost of hiring Catherine Razzo for the training. But if not, then I think.
So yeah, that has nothing to do with that. I was looking. So we're doing a salary project, which will ultimately come out hopefully in and around the budget time when we submit that in a month's time. Just taking a look, we've ended up in about 4 or 5 separate conversations about kind of compensation review, not the least of which was triggered by the minimum wage increase and how that impacts some of our more senior part-time staff, et cetera, et cetera. So that's some of the policies in and around other universities in North America that have policies in and around kind of extra work and things of that nature. So again, my apologies. That was not part of that. I was actually really frustrated the next day when I went looking for that document and couldn't find it. So thanks for finding it.
Okay, well, that is good to note there. Okay. But with that said, do any other directors or any members of the gallery have any questions for Executive Director Champagne? As I see none, then we can thank him for his time. And before I move on to the next agenda package, I think just because we're on the topic of the governance training, so multiple polls were sent out to the board-elect regarding the training. According to brief note, the intention was to have it on the week of March 7th, but unfortunately, we could not secure a time that was suitable to even just over half the board elects. So a new poll was sent out, and now the most likely dates for training will be on March 22nd from 6 to 9. I will send out, once that date is confirmed, I will send that training invitation out to the current board as well, and communication to any board elect members. So the training will unfortunately be a little bit later than I was hoping for, in regards to once that training is complete, and when what the best government practice is to hire the chair and then perform chair training for them. But I will keep this and the new board updated on those ongoing efforts too as well. But for now, just want to let everyone know as ahead of time as possible to check and keep that time slot open in their schedule if they are interested in attending this additional training. But with that slight deviation from our normal scheduled program, we can then move on to our next agenda item, which is the Finance Committee final report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know, perhaps if you're able to share your screen.
Yes, I do
okay,
have the
that'd be
ability,
great.
and you are now able and live to do so.
Oh, okay, you're not, okay. Give me a sec here. Okay, share screen. Share the right thing. Okay, folks, if you can let me know if you guys can see my screen, that would be appreciated. Perfect. So in brief, I don't know, I mean, hopefully everybody's read this, although I know we're all students in that, but so I'll just kind of give a quick high level summary, and then I guess just feel free to ask questions. So in brief, our committee met on the second occasion back on Family Day. So we were hard at work on the holiday to go through to get this done in time for the end of February. So we've reviewed the recent evidence that's provided our last board meeting prior to and there's something in the chat. Oh, okay. Last board meeting regarding the President's Monitoring Report that was then subsequently approved by the board, with the exception of EL2E7. So the approach that we took as a committee was the president submitted an updated report following the direction of the board at that last meeting a day or two later. And so the board considered that evidence at the time, which was substantially similar to what was provided in the original report. And so that forms the context of that. So in brief, really what we're looking at is just some of these are more suggestions, and then some of it really is encapsulating more, information that we would expect to see or provided within the appendices, and just really on some evidence and just some kind of clarifications to really enhance, like in this one's, indicate the meaning of what is the purpose, or what is that graph depicting, if you will. And then a couple more critical ones, it was reported there was no evidence of capital purchase having been made over 5K, but the board is aware of 2 capital purchases over 5K, that being the video project and FNCC, which were approved, by the board. And then just really ensuring, that references and appendices are correct and accurate. And sort of as a suggestion was just kind of including hyperlinking in the report to link back between the references, just to make it quick and easy to navigate, given that's just quite a lengthy report. And then in brief, just some kind of strategic, kind of more focused questions. And so in summary, I don't know if there's any questions from the board or.
Okay, so with that, so we can open up the floor for questions. I see Executive Director Champagne, you have your hand up. You can go ahead.
Yeah, so myself, Chris Turner, President Jamiloff and Ian kind of went over this afternoon in preparation for this conversation. And there are a lot of really good legitimate points and things that need to be cleaned up. I don't necessarily think that I need to take, well, I'm going to lower my hand, sorry. I don't necessarily need to take up a bunch of time here at the board meeting, but one of the things that I was going to recommend is that perhaps we can table this recommendation and perhaps a representative of that committee, if not more than just a representative of that committee, would be willing to sit down with us as a group and kind of go over them to kind of better clarify what it is that you're specifically looking for. Because there are some, as we said, some legitimate things that can very easily be cleaned up, not the least of which would be the aged payables and receivables. But there was also a little bit that felt like that was getting into the weeds on some of it. So we would like to just kind of be able to sit down and have a conversation and kind of be able to help fine tune what it is that the board would be looking for moving forward. Because we did have some pretty big questions that probably need to be addressed before this gets approved.
Sure. No, as chair of the committee, I would be open to that. And I think the committee would certainly, entertain sort of having it just kind of flesh out sort of the thinking on that. So I think that would be is reasonable. So I'm going to motion that we defer this to the next meeting and to allow the committee for discussion with finance.
So
And
from an action item, just for my own sake,
yeah,
would you like operations to set up that meeting? Or would you as directors like to set up that meeting? Just want to know who's responsible for putting in the calendars, and then ultimately on the board committee side, who's interested in participating in that meeting and conversation.
Yeah. So I'll connect with the committee to see, well, actually, I guess who do we have? I guess we have everyone here. So who's interested? So Andrew, Frankie, and or Director or Chair Dang, Chair or Director Del Giudice or Director Shandok. Are any of you interested in attending this meeting?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe at least within our discussion that we found it like, unreasonable to put, all this, like, kind of swamp the president with this. So I think we were discussing to have a future meeting anyway now. So I think we're good to move forward.
Frankie, were you interested?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I think it'll be Chair Dang, myself as Chair of Finance, and Director Del Giudice. So I guess who I can perhaps coordinate with operations and.
So Brandon, let's you and I touch base this week, and we'll get it in the books.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll make a note of that too as well.
So I'll just, and then I made that motion just so it's, so do we think 2 weeks is reasonable to defer this, or do we want longer?
Well, I think we can get this settled pretty quickly once we get into a room, for sure. So by next board meeting, I don't think that should be
okay.
a problem.
So let's go for the, I will motion to defer this to the next board meeting.
Okay.
Which is March 14th, 2022.
So we have mover and we have secretary Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. So I guess after this meeting, we can have Executive Director Champagne and Director Vale connect and give updates to the board afterwards. Next, moving on, we have another committee final reports that is direct inspection committee BMD 2C. So I'll pass it off to the chair of that committee, which is Director Brian.
Hi, everyone. One point, Chair Dang, are you able to share screen of the?
I can share the screen.
Yeah, just because I'm on my laptop and I can't seem to access it, so that's something on my end. I apologize for that. Yeah, so myself and Chair Dang and Director Phillips also we looked over obviously the content for DIC BMD number 2C for our committee, but our final decision in the end was that the committee consists have decided on 0 recommendations for the policy in hand and that it's sound. So I'm not sure, Chair Dang, if I have to say anything else on that.
No, I think, yeah, we as committee just thought that we didn't want to go too much in the weeds and that the policy as presented captures exactly what it needs to state. So I think we can move on to a vote by the board if they are satisfied with the work of this committee. So with that, we can have a motion that the board of directors approve or adopt the final report of the direct inspection committee BMD2C. So do we have a mover? We have Director Phillips, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, do we have any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. So we can move on to next agenda items. So we have two committee elections today. So first, we have the ownership linkage. So just as a reminder, if we go on page 42, which is the last page of the agenda package, ownership linkage. So this is something that we as a board have unfortunately been delaying with all the work of the by-elections and then the annual general meeting in January. So just as a quick reminder, this is a committee that will help create an event that will hopefully engage the ownership in some sort of fun, creative way to get them to say hey, we are the board of directors. Hey, this is the great work that the students union does. And hopefully get some feedback on how they feel about the work in the organization. The committee consists of myself as chair of the board and 4 directors to be elected by the board, with 1 spot reserved for a representative from each campus. So at least 1 Brantford director in this case. Hopefully the work of this committee will be to create some sort of fun event before the end of March, hopefully on campus. So the floor is open now for nominations. So again, we have 4 spots open for this. Anyone interested? Yes, Director Bothwell.
I nominate Director May, as we need a Brantford representative.
Director May, do you stand?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Director Del Giudice.
I nominate Director Bothwell.
Director Bothwell, do you stand?
Oh, no, I don't. As much as I'd love to, I'm dying this month.
Understandable. Director Phillips.
I nominate Director Del Giudice.
Director Del Giudice, do you stand?
Unfortunately, I cannot. I have a lot going on this month as well.
Okay. We have 3 more spots, regardless of campus, open. Director Bothwell.
I nominate Director Phillips.
Director Phillips, do you stand?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you, Director Phillips. It's a fun
And
committee, guys. We get to, like last year, we did a virtual escape room.
Oh yeah, I won that. It was pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Okay. Sorry, Director Phillips, you have your hand up.
I'd like to nominate Director Sinidi.
Director or Vice Chair C, do you stand?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And we have one more. Director Bob, I saw that your hand was up before.
Yeah, I was gonna nominate Director Kennedy, but I'll nominate Director Shandok.
Director Shandok, do you stand?
I do.
You stand. Okay. We now have a full committee. Does anyone else have any other nominations? And so we can enter into a committee election. If not, we are going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, so can I get the can I have a motion that the board of directors approve the acclamation of Director May, Director Phillips, Vice Chair Sini, and Director Shandok to the ownership linkage committee? So motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? By the way, I believe that there's no need for an abstention on this since there's no perceivable conflict of interest. If there's no discussion on the matter, then we can move into any oppositions, any abstentions. See none, the motion passes unanimous consent. So I'll be in contact with the members of this committee to discuss maybe some fun ideas that we can have to implement onto the with the ownership, and maybe hopefully some discussion about board social too snuck in there as well. Okay, with that being said, thank you for that. And we can move on to our next committee elections. That will be the board honorarium ad hoc committee. So first, I believe that there was a discussion that I believe Director May would be stepping down from the honorarium ad hoc committee due to now having the committee assignment of the ownership linkage. Is that correct, Director May?
Yes.
Okay, so just confirm for the record that you are now stepping down from the board honorarium ad hoc committee.
Yeah, I'm stepping down.
Okay, so with that being said, we have a spot open for the ad hoc committee, and this can be regardless of campus. So do we have any nominations? Yes, Director Vale.
I'll nominate Director Phillips, and just so for some context, for my fellow directors as chair of the honorarium committee, generally speaking, sort of the commitment is generally on typically been on a Friday, kind of morning, early afternoon is sort of generally when we've been meeting, just for context, if that helps, like in terms of having an approximate time when we're just generally meeting.
So, sorry, pardon, can you please repeat that? I didn't quite.
I said just for context for those who like if they're considering an interest in this, just know that generally we've been kind of meeting on Fridays in the morning or midday or early. Just that seems to be the best time that fits with schedule. So if somebody who's interested in that fit their schedule, then just they could take it into account if they wanted.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, do we have any nominations now?
Director Phillips is already nominated.
Oh, Director Phillips is nominated for this. Okay, so Director Phillips, do you stand?
I do.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? As I see none, then can I get a motion that the board of directors approve the acclamation of Director Phillips to the board honorarium ad hoc committee? So we have a Director Bothwell, mover, and seconder Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, then any opposition? Any abstentions? As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. So I'll be in contact with Director Phillips and with the chair of the honorarium committee to discuss updates in the future. Okay, so moving forward, I believe that now our next agenda item is the in-camera session. So can I motion that the board of directors move in camera with President Yamloff, our executive director, as well as our director of research policy and advocacy, Ian Mueller, with the board secretary. Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimous consent. So we are now going to end the public regular meeting and move in camera with the board. So for those members of the gallery, I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight. And for anyone watching, thank you for tuning in. And we hope to see you at our next board meeting on March 14th. Have a great